Welcome back, friends. Thanks for being here. This is Steve, and this is going to be my attempt to upgrade from DOS 3.3 to DOS 4.x. Heard lots and lots of horror stories about DOS 4.x, and I'm kind of curious. I don't remember if I ever did this, if I ever did DOS 4 back in the day, or if I went straight from 3 to 5. I'm pretty sure I went straight from 3 to 5, and I may have experimented a little bit with 4, but don't remember it all that much. So I'm going to give it a go. We're going to see what happens. And leave a comment down below and let me know if me being slightly off center on the screen is messing with your OCD. Stick around. Okay, so we have dutifully made a backup copy of our DOS workstation in case this thing happens to screw up. MS-DOS 4, I've heard lots of bad things about it. Let's see if it screws up. First thing we got to do is boot up the machine, and we will see our familiar VirtualBox startup, and welcome to DOS 3.3, which, as you remember from previous videos, I stuck that in the AutoExec bat, so it would look pretty friendly when we turned it on. Doesn't tell you a whole heck of a lot of what to do about it, but there it is. So the first thing that we should be doing is putting the DOS 4.0 floppy disk in the drive. And I have this install.img. That seems like the right way to start. Stick the install in, and let's reboot the machine. It'll boot off of the floppy disk, and then it wants immediately to change disks to the select disk. I wonder if we change this to the select disk and boot off of the select disk, if that would be time saving. Let's try that. I'm going to try and boot off of the select disk. Nope, can't boot off the select disk. Fantastic. Off to a roaring start. Go back to the install disk, reboot, at which point it wants us to put in the select disk. Press enter. Welcome to DOS 4.0 and the Select program. Select will install DOS 4.0 on your fixed, that's a hard word to say, fixed disk or diskette. If you install DOS 4 on diskette, the number of blank floppies, blah, blah, blah. If you install on a hard disk, you'll still need blank floppies. Interesting. Insert the install disk. I feel like I'm going in circles. There's the install disk. Here's all the keys that you'll be using in the Select program. Okay. Some of those keystrokes look familiar. F1 for help, tab to move between display entries, escape to cancel, enter to proceed, F3 to exit. All right. Choose an option. Minimum DOS, maximum program, balance between the two, or maximum DOS, minimum program. We're going to do maximum DOS because that's the kind of channel this is. Accept the predefined country and keyboard. I want to install it on the C drive. I want to put it in the DOS directory, and I want to install all DOS files on fixed disk. How many printers do I have? None. I want to install the DOS shell, for sure. And I want to accept all the things that I've already told it to do. And now it wants, for now, leave the install disk in and press A. For now, leave the install diskette in drive A and press enter to continue. And then remove the install disk from drive A. This might make a little bit more sense if you remember how slow floppy disks were, and that this would have actually taken time between pressing keys. And you would have heard something, and it might have sounded like something was happening, but because this is all virtual stuff, it's happening really fast. Insert the operating disk. Insert the DOS shell disk. Installation is complete, and we didn't use all of the disks. Remove all disks, and press Ctrl-Alt-Delete to restart DOS. Incorrect DOS version. Error in config sys line 8. Incorrect DOS version. Fantastic. Let's see what we can do to fix that. Okay, so that was a fantastic out-of-box experience. This thing just didn't work right out of the gate. It says incorrect DOS version, error in config sys line 8, and incorrect DOS version. Let's see what we can do. Let's put the install disk back in. Let's reboot the machine. Press enter to continue installing DOS, which we already did and didn't work, or press escape to exit. So we press escape. That gives us an A prompt. Our hard disk is still there and stuff is still installed. Command come on the hard disk is 4.0. So that's weird. I mean, it's good that it's there, but it should be booting. And it said config sys error on line 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, saying the install equals line is bad. Well, fast open just caches where your files are located on disk. It doesn't cache the contents of the file, just the locations of the file. So it does speed things up, but not in the way a traditional cache would that you think of today. Not going to worry about that. Then it's telling me twice that there is a valid DOS version. Meant to type was path, not prompt. Path. Hey, DOS shell works. Isn't that pretty? Get out of there. Version of command com in this folder matches. So why aren't we booting? Alright, move the floppy disk from the drive and reboot without any startup files. If that's any better. Error in config sys line 8. Put the floppy disk back in and see what we did wrong. Did I just copy that instead of removing the original one? I think that's what I did. Yep, that's what I did. Try that one more time. Hey, we booted in. So there's something in config sys and in autoexec.bat that's messing things up. So let's take that and reboot it. See if it's something in config sys. Okay, so incorrect DOS version, error in config sys line 8, and then it asks for the date and time. It means it starts booting. So let's see what's going on in config sys. Shell C:" DOS command. Okay, so that works. That's the right version. Device equals ANSI sys. I can't do that. C:/DOS/fast open. Correct DOS version. Okay, so it is the fast open command that's giving us grief. Let's comment that out. I don't know that there is a comment outline for config sys. Just try that. Save and exit. Reboot. Okay, no error there. And let's boot. Incorrect DOS version. Okay, so there's something going on in autoexec.bat. Our floppy disk back in. Boot. Press escape. C drive. Still have our backup, so let's delete. Let's look inside autoexec.bat first. Set comp spec, verify off, path, append, prompt, version, shell. So what I'm going to do is remark out everything except for the, you know what? I'm going to remark out this first line that says echo off, which will then show all of our commands as they occur. Maybe that'll give us some insight as to which one it is. So it doesn't like the append/e. And we started off with the DOS 3.3 version on the hard disk and then tried to upgrade it, which might be where part of our problem comes. But at least we're learning something as we go. So let's put our boot disk back in and reboot. Press escape, and then C drive, and then edit the autoexec.bat file. We know the append commands don't work, so let's remark those out. Got a prompt, a version, and a DOS shell. Right, remove our floppy disk from our floppy drive again, so we boot off of the hard disk. And we're straight into DOS shell. We can get the command prompt. Okay, that gives us a command prompt. Type exit to return. File system. That's a pretty little graphical tree of the file system. There's the folders from before. Great. And F10 for actions menu at the top. File. Delete, rename, create directory, select all, display options, file options, show information, arrange, system file. Weird. I guess this is just as they appear in alphabetical order, regardless of what path they're in. Doesn't seem useful, but there it is. Let's exit file system, which takes us back to the main menu, change colors, cycle between different hideous color palettes. Awesome. Like there's 4 to choose from. Yeah, 4 to choose from. Okay, we'll take that one. DOS utilities. Set date and time, copy a disk, compare a disk, back up your hard disk, restore your hard disk, or format. Okay. So now we know what the problem is with the installer, which is actually kind of interesting. It saw my old config sys from my 3.3 machine and my old autoexec bat, and it made backup copies of them, thinking they were from OS2. And then it put their own versions in, but it wasn't smart enough to move things out of the way in the DOS folder. So, can we rename a directory? Required parameter missing. Okay, so that works, you just can't rename a directory. DOS shell to the rescue. I almost typed DOS hell. File system. Yep, you cannot rename from here either. Well, it also lost my selection that I did. I didn't know in the first place. File, and we can rename. And we've renamed that, and let's run through the installer again. Floppy drive, all, and restart. So, DOS 4.x upgrade from DOS 3.3, not a thing. It wants the select disk now. Let's put the select disk in. Press enter, put the install disk back in, press enter. We want all the DOS, even more DOS than we asked for last time that we didn't get. Install it on C, install it in the C drive, keep going back to DOS, no printers, install the DOS shell, why not, accept the configuration, the copy disk, we have that. For now, leave the install disk in and press enter. Take the install disk out and we put copy disk, done, put in the operating disk, hit again, error occur, enter to continue, shell disk, not getting any better. Error occurred. Installation is complete. Files autoexec.400 and config.400 have been copied to your fixed disk. The files contain the options selected for DOS 4. You get the options selected, update your autoexec bat and config sys files, refer to MS-DOS 4 User's Guide book for more information. I don't have that book. I don't know what I'm going to do. Remove all floppy disks and reboot. Let's try that. Work this time? Oh, yeah. Well, because it didn't put in its versions. Let's delete config.sys. Let's delete autoexec.bat. Let's config.400 to config.sys. Copy autoexec 400 to autoexec.bat. And let's reboot. Oh man, that worked even better than it did the last time. Okay, so the upgrade didn't work, and the install on an existing hard disk with a bunch of stuff on it didn't seem to complete anything, and we got some errors. Let's run the installer one more time just to give it a fair trial. Kind of more than fair at this point. Pick the install disk, and we will reboot. Insert the select disk. Maybe it was me. Maybe I put in the wrong disk last time. So enter to continue, put the install disk in the drive. I'm getting really good at this. Now leave the install disk in, which we did. Now we put the select copy disk. Now we want the operating disk. Operating 1. Error occurred. We're back to getting errors. Shell disk. An error occurred. Complete. Move and restart. And same situation as before. Okay, let's go for broke. There's not a whole lot installed on this machine, and I have a backup. Let's put the install disk in and reboot. We're going to format the C drive and start over from absolute blank. That works. Yes. Data on non-removable disk be lost. Track complete. DOS 4 grid. Okay, 20 megs of space available. 20 megs total. Nothing in use. Just to be sure, hey, there's nothing in use and the volume label is MS-DOS 400. Good. Let's reboot. Select disk. All disk. Maximum DOS function. Predefine stuff, put it in C:/DOS. I have no printers. Install the shell. Accept the configuration. Leave the install disk in. The copy disk in. Operating disk in. Hey, that worked just fine. The shell disk in, just fine. Installation is move the disks and press Ctrl-Alt-Delete to reboot. Move, Ctrl-Alt-Delete. Okay, that's a little more promising than the last time, but I gotta say, the rumors you heard are true. File system. Not a whole lot on the file system. Okay, we got some commands to go through. Let's, we've already done assign, we've already done a trib, we've already done check disk. I was gonna drop out and do these by hand, but we've got this nifty DOS shell that's brand new. Let's see. Entry sys, debug, disk compare, disk copy, display DOS shell.bat. Can we view the contents of this file? File, open, print, associate, copy, view. View is grayed out, so I probably don't have the file selected. Now, file is selected because the icon right here changed to be a solid instead of a not solid. Go back up and menu. Oh, we can view now. Viewing file's content. It's page up or page down. I don't have page up or page down keys on this keyboard. Viewing the file. cd/DOS shell b space DOS shell. Error level 255. Go to end. Turn the brake back on. Otherwise, turn brake off. Shell C /trans/color/DOS/menu/SND/shell.mu/clear/prompt. Wow, that's a whole bunch of stuff going on. Ugly. Okay, back to the file list. Still in the okay, .shell. What does that look like? MEU file. Binary file. It gets menu help files and stuff. Shell. This kind of stinks with the keyboard interface. It's probably halfway decent with the mouse interface, but I don't have a mouse driver. That didn't come with DOS. Edlin, we know all about Edlin. As in, we know we don't want to mess with Edlin. FC is file compare instead of disk compare. Fdisk, file sys. What is file sys? Run it with no options. Who's found? Okay, Shift F9. Get a command prompt. In the DOS folder. We get any help? Who's found? Let's try a gamble and see if it's going to give us something there. Nope. Awesome. Go to the Googles and see what the Googles say. Let's type exit, select the file, and view it and see if there's anything inside. Give us any clue. Have a page down key. That's all we get. Yeah. Anyway, find was to find text within a file. We did that one. Format. We actually just did that one to get this thing working. IFS func. Run it with no options. Invalid configuration. And I think that was internationalization thing. It wasn't internationalization. It was installable file system. And real mode file system type issues. Join, we did that before. That's where you're joining a drive to a folder. And substitute would have been the opposite of that, where you're joining a folder to where you're substituting a folder for a drive letter. Substituting a drive letter for a folder. You can look back in my earlier exploring DOS videos to figure out about join Join and assign. Join and substitute. Wow. PB. PB has not been installed. Active code page not available from COM device. Yep, so that's how you substitute different code pages for your keyboard. Keyboard driver, label. Label would change the label of the disk. It's going to tell you that the current one is MS-DOS 400. MS-DOS 400 without a hyphen. Ta-da! We've relabeled the disk. Mem. Mem will tell you the amount of memory you have. The largest executable program size is 560,656. Or we'll put stuff on the screen and then pause at the bottom. We did that. PC IBM drv.mos. See if we can view that file. Thing. Tells us it's version 4.0. Who would have thought? Oh, there's a hex viewer in here. Still need page up or page down keys. Still don't have them. Print.com. What are we printing? Name of list device is PRN. Part of print installed. Print queue is empty. Okay, that's a print spooler. That's neat to have. So printers used to be really slow and take up all of your computer's time when you went to print something. You'd tell it to print something and you just wait for the printer to stop, however long it took. And so we had print queues where it would send data out to the printer in the background while you got to work on other things. So that was nice. Place required. I'm going to drop out to an actual DOS prompt and place a little bit. Okay, so let's make test folders. File cannot be copied onto itself. Replace test1.txt with test2.txt. Path not found. There is a test2.txt file in this folder. I didn't spell it wrong. Interesting. Well, that works fantastically, don't you think? Oh, that's my fault. That's not interesting. The replace command is used to replace one or more files with one or more other files. Kind of already knew that's what it was going to do. But actually, as you can see from this video and from other videos, DOS is pretty unforgiving. Okay, so I am replacing the file in the root directory of the C drive called test2.txt, replacing the contents of the current file in the current directory called test2.txt with the contents of the file in the root directory. So let's see what's in here. Should say test2. Okay, so now we need to go to the, we need to make another temporary file to copy. Test3. Keeping up with what I'm doing here, folks? Okay, so in the root directory we have a file called test2 that has the contents of test3. And just to be on the safe side for science purposes, there it is. It's on the C drive in the root directory, and it's got the contents of test3. In the current folder, which is called test1, there's a file called test2.txt, and it has the contents of test2. So we do replace :/test2.txt, and it will replace the current file in the current folder with the contents of what was in the root directory, right? That makes sense? So this file should say, what do you think? Say test3, right? Test3. Okay, so that's what replace does. It seems like it'd be easier just to do it with existing tools. Let's make new tools that do things that old tools in a more confusing way than the old tools would have done it. Because what I would have wanted to do would be copy c:/test2.txt, which would dump it into the current folder. Ta-da! Okay, so now we have the same setup as before. File in the root directory called test2 has the contents of test3. The file in the current directory called test2 has the contents test2. Copy c:/test2.txt says test3. I'm not seeing the value of that. Okay, well, let's go back into DOS shell and select. What does select do? Press enter to continue installing DOS. Well, now that DOS is already installed, that seems a little redundant, don't you think? Especially after all the trouble we went through to get here. I don't want to do it again. Like help, share. Very useful output. Share installs support for file sharing and locking. Okay, that makes sense. So that's so the two programs can access a file at the same time, because we were starting to get into TSRs, terminate and stay resident programs. We were starting to get into swapping between one program and another. We were starting to get into multitasking. There is a multitasking version of DOS 4, and there's a multitasking version of OS 2 1.3 available at this time. Let's see what the contents of this file are. Very nice. There was a view key shortcut. I forgot to select the file before I went to the menu to view it, so I couldn't view it. Shell.clr, this is probably the color choices for the shell. Shell help, shell B, shell C. That was inside of the DOS shell.bat file. These are different ways to execute commands. So let's do shell B, shell batch file name missing or correct, shell C, startup option correct. And it didn't launch a new version of the shell and drop me into it. Let's check our path. Yep, the DOS folder is in the path. b/test1, simple batch file. That at echo off, echo simple test bat. Shell B test bat. Does not echo the content. Test bat. Labels in. Oh, because I'm not in the folder anymore. Simple test bat. Okay, so the batch file works. That's not the problem. Shell B test.bat drops us back to a command prompt. And when we ran that, it didn't work the last time. Okay. Are we inside of a shell inside of a shell? Yep. Okay. That not inside of a shell anymore. Weird. Correct startup option. Okay. So from before, shell B DOS shell, if error level 255 go to end, which would have turned break back on, but basically it would have just exited out of the batch file. So is it calling itself shell B DOS shell.bat? Suitable file. Man, that's a whole bunch of command switches. Group file missing or... So it looks like DOS shell is a batch file that then calls shell B to call itself again. If error level 255 go to end, which means if something breaks, just exit. Otherwise, go to a label for the sake of a label. That's probably just a developer making a note for himself. Turn break off, and then run shell C with a whole bunch of different command line. That's kind of an ugly way to do that. That's not how I would have done it as a developer, and I'm sure there was a reason for it. And if you are the developer of DOS 4's DOS shell, please let me know. Short does exactly what you think it would do, and I think we did this in the last one. Sort in alphabetical order, instead of just in whatever order they appear on the disk. File there at the end. Like a memory state file. DOS shell. Let's get back into DOS shell and take a look at what's next. Substitute we went over. Sys puts the operating system files on the C drive. Tree, or on a floppy disk, so you can boot another machine with this version of DOS. Tree. Let's run tree. No subdirectories exist. Okay. Auto command prompt. Go cd / and run tree. Hey, look at that. There's a pretty little graphical representation of the folder layout of the C drive. Let's get back in. Xcopy. That's the last one for DOS 4, but there were a couple of other floppy disks. I don't know why there were other floppy disks. We didn't copy them over during the install. Okay, so what Xcopy does, what copy used to do, the regular copy program, I guess it still is, it would copy in, I want to say 64-byte chunks, because computers didn't have a whole lot of memory when you first got them. It was rare in the earlier days of computing to have a machine that actually had the full 640K that DOS could easily address and understand. It was pretty common to get a computer that only had 128K of memory and then do an upgrade to 384 or up to 512 or up to 640K or even up to 1 meg and then go crazy with that. But the regular DOS copy command would only copy 64 bytes at a time. And the number's not terribly important, and if I'm wrong, somebody correct me in the comments. But it would copy 64 bytes, write it to disk. Copy a different 64, copy the next 64 bytes, write it to disk. Copy the next 64 bytes, write it to disk. What Xcopy did was Xcopy was smart enough to say, you have 384K of memory. Out of that 80K is in use. Let's copy 304K of data into memory and write it back out to disk. That's probably oversimplifying it a little bit, but you get the idea that it tried to use more memory to make the copy work faster. This machine's got plenty of memory, and if I demonstrate it for you, it's going to look exactly the same. But we can do that anyway, because I like stuff like that. All right, cd / directory test2, cd test2, test1. There's 3 files in test1. There are no files in test2. Xcopy c:/test1 ** space current folder. Well, I don't even know if we need to. Yeah, we don't need to. So all 3 of those files, 33 + 7 + 7, all 3 of those are small enough to fit into memory. Did it in one complete movement. Right? dir delete *.*. Yes, I'm sure I want to delete all of them. Now the directory's empty. Copy c:/ test1. Copied all 3 of them, and it might have looked like it went a little tiny bit slower, but that might have also just been display work. Not a big deal. Other things that Xcopy did that regular copy didn't was it could copy subdirectories. It could copy subdirectories even if they were empty, because for some reason you could also omit copying subdirectories if they were not empty. It could verify the copy, and it could answer yes to any questions that it might have asked. And I remember this because I did /s/e/v/y an awful lot back when I was doing that. Test1, and that was for DOS 5, I guess. So we hit F3 to recall the command. Remove that. All right, and then we copied them. So let's delete *.*. Yes. Let's go back to spelling counts, test1, make dir sub test1, spelling counts again. Two. Tree. Look at that. We've got test1, subtest1, subtest2. Test2 should be nothing in there. We do copy c:/test1. 3 files copied. dir tree c:/. No magic there. Let's delete all these files in test2 again. Nothing here. Xcopy /s/e/v c:/test1. And the verify thing was kind of weird. Like, I guess for speed savings, they didn't verify that the data was copied. You just kind of took it for granted that everything was going to be fine because you had perfect media and nothing ever broke back then, right? But you could verify, you could put this additional verify step in. Today, verify would just kind of be part of the process, probably, I hope. Let's see, xcopy subdirectories. Well, let's do xcopy subdirectories first. With xcopy with subdirectories first and see what happens. Didn't copy any subdirectories because they are empty. And now we have copied the empty subdirectories over. So xcopy had some more powerful features. So sometimes you just get in the habit of using xcopy exclusively instead of using the copy command. There we go. Now let's do cd/dos and let's insert those extra disks to the drive, file, operating 2, MM386. So there's a high memory driver, execute to binary, you'd convert an executable to binary, GW basic. Let's see what version of basic comes with this. All right, version 3.23. I was told in a comment on a previous video that when I typed in system and ran it, I was actually launching a shell. So there's, instead of exiting out of basic and returning to the operating system, I was creating a shell underneath of basic. So it was operating system, basic, shell. So 543424, let's reboot. Oh, I still have that floppy disk in the disk drive. Let's remove this. Okay, we are now into DOS shell. Let's just exit DOS shell entirely. 573360. Disk back in. 2. 73360. Five 73360. Okay, so system appears to be the way to exit basic, not to create a shell underneath of basic. Either that or it's unbelievably memory efficient. GPU basic system. Way to exit out of a subshell back into your major program is to type exit, so there you go. Link and execute to binary are assembly type things. Print we went over. RAM drive would allow you to create a virtual disk drive inside of memory, which would be really fast. Smart drive is a file caching or disk caching program. XMA2 EMS would convert extended memory area to expanded memory. We had that all installed, and we don't. See what's on the next disk. Reading 3. So there wasn't any more than what we see here. Command com, we know what that is. That's the actual DOS command shell. ANSI sys is the one that puts all kinds of fancy colors on the screen. We'll get to that in a future video. Append, we did in a previous video. Country sys, display sys, driver sys, fast open. Fast open, the thing that memorized the file system table. I don't know why they went with fast open instead of going with smart drive by default, but they did. Graph table, graphics, graphics pro, himem.sys. Keyboard.com, keyboard.sys, mode, funk. I'm not seeing anything new here. Recover. Yep, nothing new here. README text. There's a README text file. I don't know why I'm worried about being case sensitive. Okay, device drivers, ANSI sys. IMM-sys, installable device driver memory, ability, system requirements. Okay. This is some more advanced stuff that you probably wouldn't need right out of the gate with DOS. What you would need if you were a power user and had a bunch of permanent and state resident programs loaded, or you wanted to load a very large application into memory that needed as much of the lower system memory as possible, but you still had like a mouse driver or something like that. We don't have any of those programs to demonstrate because this is just DOS and there's not a whole lot going on. So during the install, it created a select copy disk. Let's see what it put on that select copy disk. Command com auto exec. This looks like it is a bootable disk. Let's leave it in the drive and reboot and see what happens. This is literally a copy of the select disk. Well, no. wants us to insert the select disk and try again. So I press enter, and it knows, it's smart enough to know that this isn't the right disk. We are. Okay, why it created that disk, I have no idea. There might be something in the manual install disk. Yeah, C drive, dir. So that is DOS 4. Not really a good out-of-box experience. I got it to work, but a casual user wouldn't have known those kinds of things. I'm not saying I'm a genius, but I'm slightly less than a casual user. Imagine somebody who was brand new to DOS 3 and was just doing word processing at their desk at work and then tried to play with this and it did that, they'd have to call for help. We didn't have YouTube back then. We didn't have the internet. The manual wouldn't have said anything at all about that. So what had happened was the fast open command was not the right version, but that isn't what stopped us from booting. What stopped us from booting was the append command in the autoexec bat wasn't the right version. And we had to comment that out in order to get booted up. And then we had a mix of old DOS commands and new DOS commands, and we were kind of in this quasi-working state. But overall, it wasn't all that great. So I hope you've enjoyed this exploration of MS-DOS 4 as much as I've enjoyed this headache exploration of MS-DOS 4. And we'll get to MS-DOS 5 and we'll get back to some sanity. MS-DOS 5 for me was kind of revolutionary because of all of the built-in help and everything. Let's see. We tried this with like the replace command. I don't know what to do when you ask me for help, or the xcopy command. I don't know what to do when you ask me for help. And when we do the DOS 5 video, you will see that it knows what to do when you ask for help. So thanks for being awesome. We'll see you in the next one.